You're standing on frozen tundra, somewhere in what will one day be called Siberia. It's roughly 12,000 years ago. The sun barely rises above the horizon, and the wind cuts through animal hides like they're nothing. There's no GPS, there's no weather forecast, there's no grocery store you can fall back on if this goes wrong. There's just you, maybe 20 other humans, some stone-tipped spears, and the largest land animal you've ever seen. 4 meters tall at the shoulder, 6-ton body covered in thick, shaggy fur, tusks that curve like scythes, each one longer than your entire body, a woolly mammoth. And you're about to kill it. Not because you're cruel, not because you're sport hunting, because if you don't, your family starves before spring. Now, here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. You're going to succeed. Your tribe is going to succeed. Every human group across 2 continents is going to succeed so thoroughly, so completely, that within a few thousand years, woolly mammoths will vanish from the face of the earth forever. And they won't be the first. This is the story of the first animal humans ever hunted to extinction. Not the last, God knows we've gotten better at it since. Not the most famous, not even necessarily the most tragic. We're talking about the first time in human history that our species looked at another species and, through our actions, intentionally or not, erased it completely. And why that moment, whenever it was, whatever animal it was, fundamentally changed what it means to be human. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. Humans aren't just another predator. We're not just another species competing for resources. We are, as far as we can tell from the archaeological record, the first species on Earth capable of hunting other species into complete oblivion. Lions don't make their prey extinct. Wolves don't eliminate deer populations entirely. They can't. They'd starve. But humans? We figured out how to hunt so efficiently, so relentlessly, that we could kill every last one and still survive. Let's start with what we actually know, because this gets complicated fast. The oldest confirmed human-caused extinction is surprisingly recent in evolutionary terms. We're not talking millions of years, we're talking thousands. The most solid evidence points to the megafauna extinctions that happened between roughly 50,000 and 10,000 years ago, depending on which continent you're looking at. Megafauna, that's the scientific term for really big animals. We're talking woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, cave bears, dire wolves, animals that sound like they came from a fantasy novel but were very, very real. And here's where it gets interesting. The timing of these extinctions correlates almost perfectly with human arrival in different regions. Not climate change, not volcanic eruptions, not asteroid impacts. Humans show up, and within a few thousand years, sometimes much faster, the megafauna disappear. Australia is the clearest case study. Around 46,000 years ago, humans arrived on the Australian continent for the first time. The continent was home to massive marsupials, Diprotodon, a wombat the size of a car, Megalania, a monitor lizard that reached 7 meters long, thunderbirds, actual giant flightless birds called Geniornis. Within about 10,000 years of human arrival, they were all gone. Every single megafauna species, larger than 100 kilograms, went extinct. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. Chris Johnson, a professor at the University of Tasmania, published research in 2016 analyzing the extinction timeline across Australia. The data is stark. The megafauna extinctions clustered tightly around the period of human expansion across the continent, not gradually, not randomly, in a wave that follows human migration routes like a shadow. But here's where the story gets more specific and more uncomfortable. If we're asking about the very first animal, the earliest confirmed kill-them-all moment, we need to talk about New Zealand. New Zealand was one of the last large landmasses on Earth to be colonized by humans. The Maori people arrived around 1280 AD. That's not ancient history, that's medieval times. Europe had cathedrals, China had gunpowder, and New Zealand had moa. Moa were massive flightless birds. The largest species, Dinornis robustus, stood up to 3.6 meters tall and weighed about 230 kilograms. They'd been living in New Zealand for millions of years, completely isolated from mammalian predators. No wolves, no big cats, no humans. Until 1280. Research published in 2014 by Morton Allentoff and colleagues used radiocarbon dating and DNA analysis to reconstruct what happened next. The timeline is brutal. Humans arrived in 1280 AD. By 1400 AD, 120 years later, all 9 species of moa were extinct, gone. Not some of them, not most of them, every single species. That's roughly 4 human generations. Your great-great-grandfather sees the first moa. You see the last one. The Hast's eagle, which hunted moa, went extinct shortly after because its food source disappeared. The entire ecosystem collapsed like dominoes. This wasn't accidental bycatch. This wasn't climate change. This was humans hunting birds faster than the birds could reproduce and not stopping until there were none. Let's talk about why this happened, because the pattern repeats across every continent humans colonized. The moa had no fear of humans. Why would they? They'd never seen a mammalian predator. They had no evolutionary programming that said, run away from the upright ape with the sharp stick. Archaeological sites across New Zealand tell the story. Maori hunting camps with massive bone piles, hundreds of moa skeletons, evidence of feasting, of waste, of abundance. Early Maori groups didn't need to conserve. There were moa everywhere. The hunting was easy. You could walk up to a 3-meter-tall bird and kill it with stone tools. And that's exactly what happened. A 2012 study by Richard Holloway analyzed moa bone deposits at hunting sites. The kill rates were staggering. Estimates suggest early Maori populations were hunting thousands of moa per year. The birds laid only 1 egg per year. They took years to reach maturity. The math doesn't work. You can't sustain those hunting rates, and nobody tried. Think about that for a second. Humans discovered an isolated landmass with giant, slow-moving, flightless birds that had no concept of fear, and within a century, we'd killed them all. Not because we were evil, because we were efficient. Now, here's the question that should be sitting in the back of your mind. Were the moa actually the first? Probably not. The megafauna extinctions in Australia happened 45,000 years ago. The woolly mammoths in North America died out around 10,000 years ago. Giant ground sloths in South America, cave bears in Europe, the list goes on. But here's the uncomfortable truth. We don't know which specific species died first by human hands, because the evidence gets murkier the further back you go. What we do know is this. Everywhere humans went, large animals died. Not some places, everywhere. Africa is the exception that proves the rule. African megafauna survived. Elephants, rhinos, hippos, because they evolved alongside humans. They learned to fear us over millions of years. They developed flight responses, defensive behaviors, wariness. The animals in Australia, the Americas, New Zealand, they had no warning. Humans showed up as fully modern, intelligent, tool-using hunters, and the local fauna had no evolutionary adaptation to deal with us. It was a slaughter. Ted Shubin, a paleontologist at the University of Chicago, has argued that humans are what's called a hyperpredator, a predator that kills prey at rates far exceeding what the ecosystem can sustain. Normal predators self-regulate. Kill too many prey and you starve. The system balances. Humans figured out how to break that balance. We developed tools, social coordination, fire, preservation techniques. We could kill more than we needed and store the surplus. We could hunt one species to extinction and just move on to the next one. Here's the part of this video that hits different when you look at the world today. The pattern didn't stop with moa. It didn't stop with mammoths. The passenger pigeon, once the most abundant bird in North America with populations in the billions, was hunted to extinction by 1914. The last one, Martha, died in the Cincinnati Zoo. The Tasmanian tiger, hunted to extinction by 1936. the Baiji river dolphin, declared functionally extinct in 2006. We're currently in what scientists call the sixth mass extinction. Species are dying off at rates 100 to 1,000 times higher than the natural background extinction rate. And unlike the previous 5 mass extinctions caused by asteroids, volcanic eruptions, climate shifts, this one has a single clear cause: us. A 2019 UN report found that 1 million species are currently threatened with extinction, many within decades, primarily due to human activities: habitat destruction, overhunting, climate change caused by industrial emissions, pollution, invasive species we accidentally or intentionally introduced. The same pattern that killed the moa in 120 years is now playing out globally, just with better technology and worse consequences. None of this is a moral judgment. Our ancestors who hunted moa to extinction weren't evil, they were surviving. They saw an abundant resource and used it. They just didn't understand or didn't care that the resource was finite. And honestly, we're not that different. So what was the first animal humans ever hunted to extinction? The honest answer is we don't know exactly which specific species died first. The physical evidence takes us back roughly 50,000 years in Australia, possibly earlier in isolated cases we haven't discovered yet. The clearest, most documented case is the moa, extinct by 1400 AD, roughly 120 years after human contact. What we do know is this: the behavior is ancient. It predates civilization. It predates agriculture. It predates writing. Hunting animals to extinction isn't a modern problem we invented with industrial capitalism. It's something humans have been doing for at least 50,000 years, probably longer. We've just gotten much, much better at it. The rate has accelerated, the scale has expanded, but the fundamental pattern, humans arrive, large animals die, has been consistent since the late Pleistocene. There's something genuinely sobering about that. For all the things that separate modern humans from our ancestors, the technology, the science, the awareness of ecology and extinction, we're still doing the same thing. We're still the species that sees a resource and uses it until it's gone. The moa couldn't comprehend what was happening to them. One generation there were thousands, the next generation hundreds, then dozens, then none. They didn't understand the concept of extinction. They just kept living their lives until there weren't any of them left to live. And the thing is, we do understand extinction now. We have the data. We know the warning signs. We've watched it happen to hundreds of species in recorded history. The moa died because they had no fear and we had no restraint. The question we're facing now as a species is whether we've learned anything in the 600 years since the last moa died. Because the pattern is still there. The trajectory is still pointing the same direction. Next time you see a nature documentary showing endangered species, the rhinos, the tigers, the orangutans, you're looking at the modern version of the moa. Animals that evolved in a world without industrial-scale human pressure, trying to survive in a world where we're everywhere, taking everything. Either way, we've been the extinction species for a very long time. The only question left is whether we're going to be something else.